Sometimes the most expensive weapons aren't worth the price of admission. Sometimes spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars on a new piece of equipment ends up with not just an underwhelming result, but one that can make or break an entire mission. With some weapons outright refusing to function and others not living up to their hype. Let's look at some of the biggest money pits in military history. Number 14. The Convair F-2Y, a jet-powered flying wing designed for the United States Navy during World War II. Despite seeming like a good idea, this prototype aircraft would become something of a money pit, and one of the main reasons why the project was cancelled. Aside from the overall high cost of developing such an aircraft, there were problems with reliability, malfunctioning, and maintenance. And so, in 1948, it was deemed unfit for service and scrap. With only two ever being built, the Convair F-2Y remains an interesting footnote in aviation history rather than a game changer. In fact, the F-2Y didn't do well in flight tests, which also contributed to its demise. One example of this was when the plane failed to gain enough speed during a test flight, resulting in the pilot having to bail out. Overall, the project was deemed too costly and risky to continue. This failure led to the Navy shifting its focus to other aircraft that offered better performance and reliability at a lower cost, ultimately leading to more successful projects. Number 13. The LGM-118 Peacekeeper. This was a long-range intercontinental ballistic missile developed by the Air Force in the 1980s during the height of the Cold War. It was designed to be a deterrent against the Soviet Union, and as such, had to be incredibly reliable and powerful. Unfortunately, during testing, the Peacekeeper proved to be anything but. It turned out that the missile had serious flaws in its guidance system that could potentially send it off course and lead to catastrophic consequences. In response, the Air Force spent billions of dollars to fix these issues, making the Peacekeeper one of the most expensive weapons ever made. Eventually, the missile became operational in 1995, but its reputation for being unreliable and expensive. As a result, the Peacekeeper was retired in 2010 with only 186 missiles ever deployed. While it never caused the destruction it was intended for, the LGM-118 Peacekeeper did waste billions of taxpayer dollars without achieving its objective, making it one of the biggest money pits in military history. Number 12. The M1 OT-7-2, a 155mm self-propelled howitzer designed by the U.S. Army in the late 1970s. This behemoth was intended to replace the 8-inch 240mm mortar used at the time, but it ended up being a massive waste of resources instead. After 3 years of development and over $60 million spent, the M10T-72 was cancelled due to various design flaws. The main issue was that it was too heavy for bridges and roads in Europe, which meant that it couldn't be deployed effectively. Other problems included its poor mobility and insufficient firepower compared to the guns it was intended to replace. Ultimately, the M10T-72 never made it into mass production and instead joined the ranks of other failed military projects. Its story serves as a reminder of the importance of thorough planning and testing to avoid wasting valuable resources on unfeasible design. Number 11. The General Dynamics M42 Duster. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military realized it needed a way to protect its troops from enemy helicopters and other low-flying aircraft. The result was the M42 Duster, a vehicle armed with four 40mm grenade launchers mounted on top of a Jeep chassis. Despite its seemingly straightforward design, the Duster turned out to be a major waste of money. After investing millions of dollars into its development and production, it was discovered that the weapon wasn't effective against helicopters and it broke down constantly. Furthermore, the Duster's limited range and small magazine capacity made it vulnerable to enemy fire before it could fire back. These issues led to the Duster being pulled from service after only a few years, leaving behind a legacy of wasted resources and lessons learned about the importance of practicality and effectiveness in military engineering. Number 10. The USS Lexington, one of the largest aircraft carriers ever built. Originally commissioned in 1942 the Lexington was a critical part of the U.S. Navy's fleet during World War II. However, this role quickly became obsolete as the war progressed and new technologies emerged. Despite this, the Navy poured millions of dollars into upgrading and modernizing the carrier, hoping to keep it relevant. Unfortunately, these efforts proved to be a waste of money, as the Lexington ultimately could only keep up with the changing demands of naval warfare. The ship was decommissioned in 1991 and scrapped, leaving behind a legacy of wasted resources and missed opportunities for innovation. Number 9. The Nazi Germany's V-2 rocket. The V-2 was one of the first ballistic missiles ever created, and it holds a significant place in military history. However, its development was far from smooth sailing, and it was plagued with problems that made it a massive waste of money. The Germans spent over $1 billion in today's value on developing the rocket, but it never quite worked as intended. There were constant failures during testing, and the rocket's deployment in World War II was a disaster. Despite its advanced technology, the V-2 couldn't accurately hit its targets and often malfunctioned, causing unintended consequences. Ultimately, the Nazi regime's obsession with the V-2 led to a waste of valuable resources and a distraction from more practical military objectives. 8. The Ford Trimotor, a large transporter aircraft produced in the early 1930s. It was initially successful and even featured in several films, giving it a glamorous reputation. However, this image was shattered when one of the planes crashed, killing all 13 people on board. Despite investigations pointing towards pilot error, Ford Motor Company refused to accept liability and continued to produce the Trimotor, believing it to be safe. Unfortunately, a second crash occurred, further damaging the plane's reputation. To make matters worse, the Great Depression hit, and demand for the Trimotor plummeted. Ultimately, Ford had wasted millions of dollars on a plane that was both unsafe and unwanted, leading to the end of the Trimotor and the company's exit from the aircraft industry. 7. The A-12 Avenger II. The A-12 Avenger II was a twin-engine attack aircraft developed by the U.S. Navy in B-1960. Despite being touted as a versatile and cost-effective platform, the plane turned out to be a massive waste of money. The project was plagued by technical issues and delays, leading to an increase in costs and a decrease in performance. Additionally, the A-12's complex design made it difficult to maintain, which further drained resources. As a result, the Navy cancelled the program in 1973, leaving behind a legacy of wasted investment and missed opportunities for innovation. No. 6. The British aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal. The Ark Royal was a pivotal part of the Royal Navy's fleet during the Second World War. However, its significance was overshadowed by the fact that it was a financial burden on the British government. The Ark Royal was incredibly expensive to build and maintain, draining the treasury of much-needed funds. Despite this, the government continued to invest in the carrier, hoping for a return on its investment. Unfortunately, the Ark Royal was involved in several costly incidents, including a near collision with a battleship that resulted in significant damage. Ultimately, the Ark Royal was decommissioned in 1945 and scrapped, leaving behind a legacy of wasted resources and missed opportunities for investment in more practical ventures. Number 5. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress. B-29 Superfortress was a heavy bomber aircraft developed by the United States during the Second World War. Despite its advanced technology and impressive capabilities, the B-29 turned out to be a costly endeavor for the U.S. government. The aircraft required a significant investment to manufacture and maintain, draining the treasury of much-needed funds. Additionally, the B-29's complex design made it challenging to repair, leading to further expenses. As a result, the U.S. government ultimately decided to discontinue the program, leaving behind a legacy of wasted resources and missed opportunities for investment in more practical military ventures. Number 4. The American Civil War Ironclad USS Monitor. The USS Monitor was an ironclad warship that played a crucial role in the American Civil War, despite its historical significance. The Monitor turned out to be a costly venture for the Union Navy. The ship's construction was plagued with delays and technical issues, leading to an increase in expenses and a decrease in effectiveness. Moreover, the Monitor's shallow draft made it vulnerable to grounding, limiting its maneuverability in battle. As a result, the ship's operational costs were higher than anticipated, draining the Navy's resources. Ultimately, the USS Monitor was decommissioned in 1869 and scrapped, leaving behind a legacy of wasted investment and missed opportunities for innovation. Number 3. The French battleship Guigne-Bart. The French battleship Guigne-Bart was a formidable warship that saw action during the Second World War. Despite its impressive capabilities, the Jean Bart turned out to be a costly endeavor for the French government. The ship's construction was delayed due to technical difficulties, leading to increased expenses and a drain on the economy. Additionally, the Jean Bart's heavy armament came at the expense of speed and maneuverability, limiting its effectiveness in battle. As a result, The French government ultimately decided to scuttle the battleship, deeming it too expensive to operate and maintain. Number 2. The Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a top-secret research and development undertaking during the Second World War that led to the creation of the first atomic bomb. Despite its historical significance, the project turned out to be a costly endeavor for the U.S. government. The massive investment required to develop and test the atomic bomb drained the treasury of much-needed funds. Additionally, the project's secrecy led to a proliferation of misinformation and conspiracy theories, further increasing expenses. As a result, the U.S. government ultimately decided to drop the project, leaving behind a legacy of wasted resources and missed opportunities for investment in more practical military ventures. No. 1. The Lockheed P-748. The Lockheed P-748 was a heavy payload cargo aircraft developed by the United States during the Cold War era. Despite being touted as a versatile and cost-effective solution for transporting military cargo, the P-748 turned out to be a massive waste of money. Program was plagued by technical issues and delays, leading to an increase in costs and a decrease in effectiveness. Additionally, the P-748's complex design made it difficult to maintain, which further drained resources. As a result, the U.S. government ultimately cancelled the program, leaving behind a legacy of wasted investment and missed opportunities for innovation. With such high stakes involved, it's understandable why military projects can turn into costly mistakes. From the advanced technology of the Peacekeeper to the logistical nightmare of the Ark Royal, these stories serve as reminders of the complexities and challenges of modern warfare. What are your thoughts on the most expensive fail in military history? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more informative videos.